The merchant tribe will not challenge today.
The border tribe will not challenge today.
The river tribe will not challenge today.
The mining tribe will not challenge today.
Is there any member of a royal blood who wishes to challenge for the throne?
This corset is really uncomfortable. So could we all just wrap it up and go home? Hey, Shmata!
This was a little clip from the movie Black Panther. Although this movie is set in a fictional world, Wakanda, the fascinating thing about it is that the tribes that you just saw and their attires, they were all based on real African tribes. There are hundreds, thousands of tribes in Africa. We have been taught, we were led to this false assumption that Africa is just one block of people, but in reality, they are not. Their appearance are different. Some tribes are taller than the others, and some tribes have different hair, and other tribes might have different skin tone colors. And of course, their culture and language are also different. And this movie, Black Panther, was iconic and historic for being a kind of a blockbuster film that has an African American actor playing an African character. That was, I would say, this is one of the first, kind of movie. And I'm sure a lot of people are now a bit more kind of used to African costume and culture because of this movie. And let's move on. So this unit 9 is called Culture and Identity, and how culture is linked with an identity of an individual. The reading that we're going to look at is reading 2, called Kwame Nyongo, Film Animator. Let me start off with a quiz. Can anyone tell me who this person is? Okay, I shall give you a hint. She's an actress. She's a quite well-known actress. Okay, to give you more hint, let me introduce some of the films that she appeared in. The first film I would like to introduce is called 12 Years a Slave. It's an Academy Award film. Okay, so still no answer. Let's look at another film. Is everyone familiar with this film? It's Star Wars: The Force Awakens. It was the first film of the sequel trilogy. Okay, let's look another film of hers. Okay, so does anyone know this movie? That's right. A short clip from the movie that we saw earlier called Black Panther, and the actress in the middle of this picture. Okay, so let's find out what her real name is. That's right. Her name is Lupita Nyongo. I'm sure some of you might have got it. She's an upcoming movie star. Does anyone know where she's from? She is from a Nigerian background. It is difficult to pronounce her name, so bear with me. No, please repeat after me. Lupita. Lupita. Nyongo. Nyongo. Let's repeat once more, okay? Lupita Nyongo. Excellent. Actually, what we are kind of more interested in is not this actress, but the series of books she's holding. Are anyone of you familiar with these series of books? Does anyone know what these stories about? Does anyone know who wrote it? Yeah, that's right. The name of the author is right down there, right? His name is Kwame Nyongo. He's not really related to Lupita Nyongo, okay? Nyongo is kind of a surname in Nigeria. Okay, so repeat after me. Conway. Conway. Nyongo. Nyongo. That's right. This person is actually the main man of our class today. So here's Conway Nyongo, and let's find out what he does apart from publishing books. Now let's turn to page 212 of your textbook. It's Unit 9, Culture and Identity. It's our last unit of our textbook. So let's scan the reading called Kwame Nyongo Film Animator. It starts from page 213 to 216. I don't want you to take a huge amount of time. I don't want you to actually read them. I just want you to just scan. Try to pick up some of the key words and some of the key ideas of the passage. That's what scanning is all about. So don't take too much time, but you need to pause this video to actually scan this reading and come back. Okay, so welcome back. I'm sure most of you scanned this reading, right? So let's look at 3 questions. Number 1, what award did Kwame Nyongo receive? What did he receive? The picture or the statue or the award that is in front of you is not actually the award that Kwame Nyongo won. No, he didn't win this award. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this particular statue. It's an award for the Academy Awards, also known as Oscar Awards. It's one of the world's most famous and prestigious film awards. Unfortunately, Nyongo didn't win Oscars for Oscars. So what did he actually win? He actually won African Movie Awards. That's right. He's a filmmaker. So our second question, where did Conway go to college? Yes, he attended college in the United States. Our last question, where does Conway live now? That's right. He's back in his home country, Kenya. Before we actually delve in our reading, let's look at some of the vocabularies that you'll be encountering in this reading. So background artist, initiatives, characters, illustrator, kickstart, concept designer, magical powers, consultant, novelty, creation, ogre, humor, village. So I'd like you to take your time to try to find some of the words that might fall into these three separate categories. So which out of these words do you think might be part of a folk tale? Number two, which of these words do you think are related to the job of computer animation? And lastly, which of these words do you think are used to refer to new and innovative projects? Okay, please pause this video and try to figure this out. And I won't be giving you the answer because the answer, as I've always said, may vary. Sometimes the answer might vary according to individuals. Okay. So before we actually delve into our reading, let's do some predictions. What do you think this reading will be about? The title is called Kwame Nyongo, Film Animator. Did you make any predictions? Okay, so let's delve right in. Meet Kwame Nyongo, an artist and computer animator in Kenya, Africa. Learn how he became interested in turning ancient fables into animated stories for a new generation. Okay, so this kind of gives us an overview of who Kwame Nyongo is. He's an artist, he likes drawing pictures, and he also can create images or moving pictures, animation, using computer. And he's from Kenya. And he's from Africa, and there are hundreds and thousands of fables, stories that was passed on from the ancestors. And he uses fables and turns it into animated form for a new generation. Hi, Conway. Thank you for agreeing to be interviewed, and congratulations on winning the award for Best Animation at the African Movie Awards. Can you tell us a bit about the legend of Nyongo Hills? So this part kind of starts off like an interview. So this person is interviewing Nyongo, and he's firstly congratulating Conway on winning this award. And he's asking something about this film that Nyongo made. It's called The Legend of Gong Hills. Yes, the film is based on a Maasai traditional folk tale. Like other peoples in Africa, they have a long tradition of storytelling and folklore. Many of these stories are creation stories, that is, they tell of how things in the world came to exist, and simultaneously teach moral lessons. So he's agreeing to tell a bit about this movie that he made. It's from Maasai traditional folktale. A Maasai is a well-known tribe from Africa. They live in Kenya and Tanzania, but mostly in Kenya. So people in Africa, like people in Korea and people in Europe, they have this tradition of storytelling and folklore. So we have these like many stories that have been handed down to us from our ancestors, right? Like 홍지와 팥지, 흥부와 놀부, and these are kind of a storytelling, and they are also folklore. Many of these stories are creation stories. So these stories that have been handed down from their ancestors in Africa, they are basically, many of them are kind of involve how world came to be. That is how they tell how things in this world came to exist. And simultaneously means at the same time teach moral lessons, which means they gives us kind of things to learn from, like Aesop's fables. Aesop fables have things that we can learn from, and also like from Hungwa and Hungjapachi. They all have these moral lessons to be learned. The legend of Gong Hills is a creation story of a scenic mountain range on the outskirts of present-day Nairobi. The story is centered around the frightful ogre of the forest who has a habit of attacking the nearby Maasai village. As the story goes, he falls in love with and eventually gets trapped by a beautiful village girl. So this particular film is a creation story, and what this story kind of shows us is that it shows the creation of this mountain range that actually exists even today near Nairobi, the capital city of Kenya. So I guess seeing the word scenic means, I guess this mountain range is iconic. It has a distinctive feature. So maybe a lot of people wonder throughout the history why this particular mountain looked in a certain way. And people came up with this story to tell how this mountain range come to exist. The story is centered around the frightful ogre of the forest who has a habit of attacking nearby Maasai village. So this story kind of deals with an ogre, a giant, a scary looking giant who is scary looking. And he has a habit of, meaning he goes on, he repeatedly does this. And what he does is attacks Maasai village, people living around this part of the area. So the story goes on to tell that this particular giant ogre, scary looking this creature, he falls in love with, but at the same time in the end gets captured, gets trapped by this beautiful village girl that he falls in love with. When did you first become interested in African folk tales? As a child, I remember being told many stories by African storytellers, reading picture books and watching films. So from when he was a child, so from his childhood, he has this memory of being read many picture books, and he was also introduced to many African stories, folklores, and of course, he loved watching films. I was especially taken with the famous West African character Anansi, the spider. Alanzi is a fictional character who in some stories is human and can change into a spider or vice versa. He's always portrayed as a mischievous character who pits his wits against superior strength, usually with success. So his taken in means that he has been captivated by this famous West African character, Nancy the Spider. So it was, I would say, among many characters and many stories, he was most captivated, most fascinated by this West African character, Anansi the Spider. And of course, this Anansi is not real, it's a fictional character. And he has different, according to each stories, he might appear in a different form. Some stories, he's just a spider, but in other stories, he is human and change into spider, or vice versa. Vice versa means it's the same thing the other way around. So he's a human and can change into a spider, but also he's a spider who can change back into a human being. That's what vice versa means. It's always portrayed as a mischievous. Mischievous means he's kind of, he's always kind of questioning things. He's very curious about things, and he goes on to, doing things that he's not supposed to do, and he gets into trouble and in danger and things like that. And he pits his wits against superior strength. Wit meaning wisdom, or is I would say in a way he uses his brain to overcome a superior, someone who is maybe stronger than him, who is older than him, and so he eventually competes with a superior person or character in one way or the other, but eventually he wins that character using just his brains. In the many different versions of these tales, Alanzi weaves his way in and out of trouble and teaches the audience life lessons. This really captured my imagination. So there are different versions of Alanzi, the spider. And he weaves has two interpretations or usage. Usually spider weaves spider webs, right? But weaves in and out means he kind of evades things, going in and out of trouble. So he goes into trouble, but he just managed to come out. And he gives us our life lessons. And that really captured our main man, Kwame Nyongo's imagination. From there, I became very interested in African and African diaspora stories, including African American folklore such as John Henry and Brer Rabbit. These folk tales tend to lend themselves perfectly to the medium of animation, as they often have elements of fantasy like talking animals and magical powers. So, starting from African folk tales, folklore, such as Anansi the Spider, from there on, he branched out to other stories in Africa, and also not just only in Africa, but to stories related to African descendants, African diaspora. So what is diaspora? Diaspora are a group of people that have moved from their original place or the land of their ancestors and moved to the rest parts of the world. One such example of a diaspora are African Americans. These African Americans, their ancestors were forced to move from Africa to America against their will. Because they are originally from Africa, they can be considered an African diaspora. Another example of the diaspora is Joseonjo, as we call them. They are originally, people from Joseon, the kingdom of Joseon, but from the circumstances they were in, they are forced to move to that part in China, mostly against their will, or most of them did not really have any choice in it. Okay, another example related to our country or our nation or people is Goryeo. They live in Central Asia, and they were also moved forcefully by the Russian government. Okay, so those were some of the examples of diaspora. So Kwame Nyongo, he was fascinated he was interested in African stories and African diaspora stories. And these African diaspora stories, some of them were John Henry and Brer Rabbit, and they are such an fascinating. They are very famous African American folklore characters. They have been even made into cartoon characters, as you can see in the picture on the screen. The top one, the rabbit. This rabbit is from Disney cartoons. So even Disney made cartoons based on these characters. So these folktales tend to lend themselves perfectly to the medium of animation, meaning they are perfect, storytelling to be transferred into an animation. Why? Because they have these fantastical elements, like talking animals, like a lot of Disney movies have, and magical powers. Why do you think it is important to retell these folk tales? Folk tales usually shed light on a moral dilemma in the form of metaphor. I think African folk tales stand out because they blend creation stories, for example, why the turtle has a broken shell, with a moral lesson. It fell from the sky because he was being too greedy and wanted to eat all the feasts in the heavens. So folk tales, they teach us, about morality. Teach us right from the wrong. In many cases, as I'm sure a lot of you or all of you have experienced, usually the right decision, right choices can make us life a bit complicated. But if we choose something wrong, not always, but in some cases, it can benefit us. But it is a wrong, bad decision to make. So these folk tales kind of helps us to differentiate between right choices from wrong choices. And Conway believes that these African folk tales, they stand out, meaning they are different from other folk tales, because the reason for being standing out is because the stories kind of mix creation stories with a moral lesson, how things in the world to become, with the lessons teach about our daily lives, how certain decisions can hurt us, and certain decisions can really benefit us, like choosing the right over wrong, choosing sometimes hard over an easy choice. So it gives us an example how, like for instance, how did turtle have a broken shell looking, Why do turtles have these, shells? And these lessons kind of, stories kind of explains how turtles got these shells, and it kind of has moral stories with it. He got these shells because he'd been bad, he'd been too greedy. I find that African tales use different degrees of humor to help these lessons be received more easily. As times are changing in Africa and in the African diaspora, the traditional culture of the elders telling stories to the youth is disappearing. I feel it is important to preserve and enhance these stories and culture through this media of film and animation. So Conway feels that different degrees of humor, these kind of interesting stories, kind of entertaining aspects of these African tales, makes this a lesson to be received kind of quite easily. When person tells you do this, don't do that. If you do this, you'll get hurt. You have to make right choices. It's kind of a bit preachy. But these African tales, because it talks about different third party like characters, and it has humorous, amusing, aspects to it, these stories can be taken by the listeners more lightly, more easily. And but the situation is, and the times has changed and is still changing in Africa, not just in Africa, but from people who is from African descent, living in different parts of the world. These traditional culture of elders telling stories. So in the past, older people, elderly people, like grandpas and grandmas, used to tell their grandchildren these stories that they were told from their ancestors. And they would pass down these pass down these stories to the next generations. But these traditions are disappearing because of a change in times. And Conway believes it is important to preserve these stories and also make it more interesting by using media of film and animation.
Tinga, 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 tinga. Tinga, 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 tinga. Tinga, tinga is a land full of stories and surprise.
Tell me about it.
If you like to wonder why, Tinga Tinga is a land of wise.
You won't believe your eyes.
Why I swing from tree to tree.
One more trunk is long.
Why I'm so
Why I take why my skin is smooth and slick.
You ask why?
Why?
You ask why?
There's a story.
Lots of stories
beneath the Tinga sky.
Tinga, tinga, tinga.
Tales from Africa.
Tales from Africa.
Tinga, tinga, tinga.
Look at all my friends. I'll tell you why. Why zebra has stripes.
So that was just an opening clip from the animation series called Tinga Tinga Tales. And it shows different stories from African folk tales. And can you guess who is involved in this project? That's right, our man Kwame Nyongo. He's one of the producers. Actually, he's one of the makers of this animated series. So I would like to conclude our lesson here, and I'll continue on with Kwame Nyongo's interview with more interesting clips and fact about his life. Okay, so stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.